Welcome to our presentation, From Grandiose to Real Life, How to Embed Communication into Your Everyday Routines. Speech and occupational therapists are such lovely people, and we have such great ideas. We tend to be pretty passionate about our jobs, and we sometimes forget that in that process, we tend to overwhelm families when families just need a single change rather than an entire makeover. We want to thank the Foundation of Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics for the opportunity to present on this topic, as we are so thrilled to be able to be here to give you real life, minimal prep examples to communicate more and create as much independence for your child as possible. I am Caroline Woeber, and I am a speech therapist and AAC specialist at Children's Hospital, Colorado. I learned about Angelman syndrome about 5 years ago when a good friend of mine, Kelly, had a son diagnosed with Angelman syndrome. Colin is a super fantastic, amazing little boy, and he has so much life about him. As a friend and therapist, I felt like I could do more for Colin and Kelly. When Children's Hospital Colorado opened the Chromosome 15 clinic this past year, I felt like this was my chance. I am thrilled to bring my AAC background to the many children and families I see in clinic, which really inspired me to give this presentation today. I see families wanting to give their children more access to communication, but when there is so much going on in our lives, it can be really hard to think of those things in the moment. I want to help you.
I'm Lauren DeValk, and I'm an occupational therapist here at Children's Hospital of Colorado. I first learned about Angelman syndrome about 6 years ago when I became a caretaker for Annie, an at the time 10-year-old with Angelman syndrome. Annie immediately changed my life forever with her captivating and vivacious energy. We became instant best friends. I knew this girl was made for big things. Together, Annie and I frequently ended up on the floor laughing so hard that we cried, but we always got back up. And when we got back up together, we figured out how to go down water slides, how to go to camp for a week, and how to take adaptive yoga class. Ever since my days with Annie, I knew I wanted Angelman syndrome to be a part of my life forever and eventually get to collaborate with other providers and families in a clinic setting. So I was so excited when Chromosome 15 Clinic came to Children's Hospital of Colorado because I knew it was my chance to honor Annie's light and try to bring the same independence and access to other people with Angelman syndrome. I believe in finding new and creative ways to helping people with Angelman syndrome live up to their fullest infinite potential. Welcome to our parent caretaker takeaway braid. Here is our braid that will combine 3 different threads that weave together to make something great. But in order to get to that greatness, we must first separate each individual string and understand how it works. That's why we will first introduce the basics behind communication strategies and daily living adaptations, examine them individually, and then bring them back together into activities that you can do at home.
One way to make practicing communication and daily living skills a little easier is to step back and look at your whole child. What do you want to see your child doing? We want to see your child communicating with peers, at school, and a fine motor activity, like painting. We want to see them playing on the playground, telling their friends go. One way to support your child with this is using a holistic approach. It is the idea that we combine multiple skills from a variety of disciplines into real-life practical applications. What better way to learn than every day in meaningful situations? While Lauren and I would absolutely love to meet each of your children, we do not know your angel. Like how this shoe represents the multiple attempts the prince took to find Cinderella, we won't know what strategies will work for you and your family until we try and try and try again. In our presentation, we have tried to be as comprehensive as possible to cover the many skills individuals with Angelman syndrome work on in the course of therapy. We have also attempted to include as many real-life examples as possible. This presentation is intended to provide general suggestions for you to think about and hopefully discuss with your child's team. Our suggestions are our own and what we have used in practice. We do not receive any compensation from any of the companies pictured or referenced. The strategies discussed here are based in evidence from research and from clinical experience. In this presentation, I will not be able to tell you which AAC system is right for your child, and Lauren will not be able to suggest which adaptation is right for your child, because these things can vary greatly based on your child's age, on their motor abilities and vision, as well as their hearing. For speech, I can tell you that research has shown that gestures, pictures, and speech generating devices can be highly effective for individuals with Angelman syndrome and need to be implemented as early as possible. For OT, Lauren has informed me that the research shows a combination of adaptations, functional replacements and alternatives, motor-based repetition of 5 consecutive times, and environmental modifications are highly effective and important and also need to be implemented as early as possible. While Lauren and I would absolutely love to spend an afternoon or even just an hour with you and your child suggesting different ideas on communication and independence, ultimately, we want to empower you with what you can do. We highly encourage families to have open, direct conversations with their occupational and speech therapists, as well as other providers. And we will include a conversation sheet to help with these sometimes difficult conversations. So our first takeaway, going back to the Braid, we are going to discuss communication strategies and how to weave them into our everyday. I have 3 strategies that I am going to present to you: motivating your child, identifying the language level of your child, and how to model your child's AAC system. In our first strategy, we're going to discuss identifying what motivates your child. And I think this is so critical to our success with kids in communication. We cannot force kids to talk, and we really do not want to force them to talk and use that approach. We want our kids to be excited to tell us everything that's in their mind. And the easiest way to do this is to know and use what motivates them. When we think about this in everyday activities, it can be a little tricky. Many children do not like having their teeth brushed. So what can we do to make it more motivating? If your child is socially motivated, we can add a song, tickles, or good old 101 time. If your child is more sensory seeking, we can add a body brushing routine before brushing the teeth, or we can add bounces in your lap in between each brush. The importance is to find the fun, find what your child loves, and you know what they'll do because they are so motivated by it that you can layer it into the activities that might be a little bit more exciting or challenging. All right, strategy number 2, identify the language level of your child. So again, I want us to think about your child and take a step back. Think about where your child is at with their communication. How does your child communicate? Or what AAC system does your child use? In this presentation, we will be discussing AAC systems in reference to gestures, pictures, and a speech generating device. We know that individuals with Angelman syndrome learn to use AAC systems over time. We can generally define this as emerging, supported, and independent communicators. Let's take a look at what we can expect in each stage. If you're just starting to use pictures, gestures, or device, your child is likely an emerging communicator. Your child is probably appearing not that interested or intentional in using their new system. As a parent or caregiver, you need to be the one doing the heavy lifting. Your child needs to see you communicate in the way we expect them to communicate. A supported communicator is an individual who may be doing really well in one setting, but not carrying it over to others. So maybe your child is using the device a lot at school, but maybe isn't using it a ton at home. This language level is a supported communicator, and they really need help learning when to use the device, with whom, and for what purposes. And where are the words? A lot of times our kids just need help navigating to the right page. You may be helping your child more in different situations and with different people, or pushing them to try and combine more words by modeling. And then after this amazing journey of emerging and supported communication, your child then can become an independent communicator. And this is so amazing. However, just like we continue to learn as adults and continue to expand our own vocabularies, we can expect this of our angels as well. As parents and caregivers, it is important to continue to teach new words and to make sure these new words are available in the device. So, big pause here. While yes, it's important to know our first two strategies. If you are able to take away any strategy, I hope that you are able to take away modeling or aided language stimulation. They mean the same thing. So, as a parent or as a caregiver, I want you to take this away. You need to model using your child's AAC system. Yes, it's going to feel weird. And yes, it takes time getting used to. But this is the foundation for building your child's understanding and use of language. And you can do it. Modeling is a way for us to teach your child using the language they have access to respond with. To model, you, the parent or the caregiver, will show the child the word with a gesture, picture, or the device, just like you've always spoken to your child. In turn, we will expect your child to take it in. Your child does not have to do anything. They don't even have to watch you. I know, wait a minute. My child doesn't have to do anything? Let's take a moment to think through this. A baby is born, and we anxiously wait their first words. We talk to them every day for a whole year. We might say a few sounds or words and then wait in anticipation to see what they'll do. We need to give this same experience to our angels using their AAC systems. Let's think of it another way. We talk to a child and they talk back. This equation makes a great conversation. In this situation, the parent signs to the child and then add in a child who has great motor abilities who can sign back. And look, they're having a conversation. Oops. In both instances, the parent or caregiver is teaching the child what the expected form of communication is, and that the child wants to be just like everyone else. In both situations, the child matches the parent's style of communication. So then what does this mean for our angels who have difficulty speaking and fine motor skills? When we only speak verbally to an angel, they are being told to speak verbally back. Even if they have access to a beautiful AAC system, we are teaching them that the device is not an accepted form of communication. And then we get frustrated and our angels are confused. So what can we do instead? When we speak using the device, so device plus the child using the device, we are showing them how to communicate. We are teaching them new words and modeling the expectation. And we're able to have a conversation because we're meeting them where they need us to be. When you use your child's AAC system, they see it as acceptance. You use it, so it must be okay for me to use it too. All right, just one more slide about this. Just a recap of modeling and how to do it. You model because your child needs to see you do it. And you got to keep modeling. Repetition is so important. Once you have modeled a word several times across a week or so, model and wait. See if in the routine your child will try to imitate you. And if your child does try, honor what they attempt and then model again. And so if we were to think about this, if we're teaching the gesture go, maybe we're doing kind of like a hand point and shake, what I would do is I would say, go. I'm verbally saying the word and I'm also gesturing. I'm pairing both the verbal and the gesture together. So then if I'm using pictures instead, I will still verbally say go, but then I'll also point to the picture. And with the device, I often find that I'm pairing my verbal language with the output that the speech generating device says. So I'm tapping the device, it says go, and I say go too. So just a quick recap of all of our strategies. We talked about motivation, identifying the communication or language level of your child, as well as modeling. No, this happens over time and with lots of practice.
And now we're going back to our braid to takeaway 2, to identify one daily living adaptation. But what even is a daily living adaptation? So without even realizing it, we all actually make adaptations every single day. It's anytime you make a change about the way you do something in order to reach a goal. If someone told you that you had to run a sprint while carrying water and make it to the finish line without spilling, you're probably going to pick a container that would make the task easiest for you. If someone gave you a bucket or a cup that was open, you would probably want to trade it in because of all that spilling and splashing. You would probably want to pick something that had a cover, maybe something that could be attached to your body, maybe on your waist, maybe strap it to your hand. Just by making a few small changes, you would go from losing all of the water to not losing a drop. So how do we carry that over every day with our angels? Every day, as parents and caregivers in the Angelman syndrome community, you are involved in so many aspects of your child's everyday care. Feeding, bathing, and dressing are huge areas of independence and self-care. And in my experience in the Angelman syndrome population, self-feeding is one of the highest areas of independence, and eating is often a super motivating activity, which makes it ideal for increasing independence. When you're looking for a way to help your child feed herself, it starts with just one small change. Maybe it starts with touching the spoon or the fork to get used to how it feels. Making one small change, encouraging them to touch the utensil, is the way that independence starts.
Now, here's where we really get into combining the speech and OT into your everyday. We have selected 7 daily routines where we offer a communication and daily living strategy or adaptation. We hope that at least one of these activities will resonate with you and your child, and that you may feel inspired to try it at home. We did have some criteria for these activities. We wanted to make sure that these would be things that happen daily or at least several times a week. We wanted to avoid having you have to juggle multiple activities or juggle multiple pieces of paper and adaptations, just hopefully making it as simple as possible with minimal to no prep. Lastly, we wanted to make sure that these strategies were able to be implemented across ages and interests. And I know, just get to the activities already, but I did want to share that we have put together a vast amount of resources of communication and daily living adaptations. I've put together a guide on gestures and created various low-tech picture boards, and Lauren has put together visual schedules and lists of adaptive equipment. Just know that when you see this little handout, that we got you covered. So without further delays, let's dive right in with usually the first activity of the day, getting dressed. Your child's day probably starts with having to take off pajamas. So let's go ahead and begin there. For an emerging communicator, the best first step is building a routine and modeling within that routine. One way to do this is to put a core board or activity board in the area where your child usually gets dressed. So here I'm using a core board. And I'm going to model the word off. For a supported communicator instead, we're going to encourage a child to practice words they know in one context and maybe in a new way, or maybe we're going to look at combining words. And for independent communicators, we want to pause. Maybe we're just going to stand next to that communication board and make sure that they're using independent communication. Know that it's also okay that if you're just starting out, to maybe only use 1 or 2 pictures to start. You don't have to start out with all 12 pictures.
In order to make taking off a little easier, especially in the context of perhaps taking off a shoe, for your angel who may wear orthotics and have difficulty grasping and manipulating shoes while maintaining their balance, it may be helpful to look into adaptive shoes that are made to accommodate any orthotics your child may wear. Many of these adaptive shoes also come with a bonus of a loop attached to the zipper that make grasping and pulling easier.
So continuing, let's now think about, we went from take off to now let's put on a shirt. And we are going to apply the same concepts as on. So with an emerging communicator, we're going to model our words. And here on the dresser, I've now put what's called an activity board. The difference between this board and the other board is that this one's very specific just to the activity of dressing, whereas the previous board was able to be used across activities. So in this situation, I can point to my picture, but this time I'm going to add a song. So a song that I often sing when putting on shoes at the clinic is I sing, shoes on, or maybe in this case, we can sing shirt on, it's time to put our shirt on. Anything to make it just a little bit more lively and fun. Continue modeling for a supported communicator and build in that routine of shirt on or put on shirt. And if we're an independent communicator, we're going to wait.
And now we're ready to talk about one small way you can help your child put on their shirt by using a household item of colored tape. Colored and textured tape is a great accommodation for visual deficits that many angels have. Using rich colors such as red, yellow, or green are great ways to increase visual participation. This population also appears to learn through sensation of touch and benefits from increased tactile or sensation markers as a guide to know where to grasp and hold items. We know that many children with Angelman syndrome love touching crinkly and bumpy textures, which makes using a textured tape an appealing option. This entire sequence is aimed at teaching you, as the parent or caregiver, how to make a handle out of the back of your child's shirt by connecting the head hole with the bottom seam when it's laying face down. You don't actually use the tape for this part. It is just shown in this example to clearly separate the head hole from the seam to show how they come together. Once you've created the handle by rolling up the back of the shirt, you'll now use the red tape or textured wrap. Wrap it in one small section on the left and in one small section on the right to create a handlebar effect. It usually takes about 2 to 3 times wrapping around to create a sturdy place to grasp. Now you should have one left-sided handlebar and one right-sided handlebar to guide your child's hands to. Now you're ready to bring this crafty t-shirt over to your fabulous child to help them work on it. They will most likely be most successful when attempting to put this on in a supported seated position, as standing balance will only add to the challenge of this already difficult coordination task. You will help position their hands on the handles and encourage them to lift up and over their head. You may provide physical assistance at the elbow to help with stability and coordination while they try. This handlebar technique is for repetition and practice only, as it does create a sort of crop top out of the shirt because it is only aimed at targeting repetitive practice of inserting the head into the hole. Research recommends repetition of a motor task 5 consecutive times. This can often be too challenging of a place to start for endurance, coordination, and attention reasons. So taking it down to 3 repetitions and building from there to work your way up to 5 is a great place to start. Another option when coordinating movements for reaching up and overhead are not realistic, potentially due to increased upper extremity or arm tremor, there are some adaptive shirts out there that are open in the back and attached closed by Velcro, which would make it so your child just has to push their arms through. And although this t-shirt is not super affordable, it is meant to be an example of how you could use Velcro and scissors to make your own cost-effective version. And now we're ready to transition over to mealtime, a favorite activity of many children with Angelman syndrome.
I frequently hear parents share that their angel is requesting mealtime or food by going to the high chair or to the kitchen. What great communication attempts. Let's take that motivation and overlay some communication on top. One way is to use a single message communicator. These answer buzzers are able to record one message at a time. For this particular use, you could record, "I'm hungry," or "time to eat." Then place the button in a place where you know your child will be able to reach it. If your child is crawling, you could place it at the base of the high chair, for instance. Then teach your child to use this communication. It is easiest when you anticipate your child's needs and model. For example, if your child had breakfast about 2 hours ago, you know that it might be time for a snack. Take your child to their high chair, press the button, and get the snack ready. Again, no demands on your child, especially when you are teaching. If you model and repeat, as well as keep the button in reach, your child can learn to tell you when they're hungry. Now, if you need additional tips, I would say we could probably also add on a picture on top so that they really see a picture of someone hungry or eating, and to pair that picture with the button by just attaching it with some Velcro or some glue. And then you may also want to Velcro the button to the chair or the general area just so it doesn't go missing.
I find that people with Angelman syndrome often benefit from making their utensils thicker in order to increase their likelihood of independently grasping. All you will need to make this simple built-up spoon is a washcloth and a hair scrunchie, and your spoon, of course. As this picture shows, you will fold the washcloth in half, wrap it around the spoon, and secure it with a scrunchie. On days where your child is able to maintain the grasp without letting go, you'll position their hand as demonstrated in the bottom photo on the left, where their fingers are on top and they are holding without help. But on days when your child is having more difficulty maintaining grasp and frequently dropping the spoon, you can reference the bottom photo on the right for an idea of how you can easily pull up the scrunchie to tuck the first 3 of their fingers underneath to create an attachment. So even if they let go, it still remains in their hand. Here's a resource for built-up foam tubing as an alternative to building your own spoon. This is a resource where you can attach items to the spoon in the same way as the washcloth. It can be used for other household items such as markers and toothbrushes.
Another great opportunity is when your child is already seated at the table. You can use a communication placemat. As your child eats, you can model and take a bite.
One of the more challenging behaviors that frequently presents during meal times is throwing. We will discuss 2 simple ways to try to positively redirect this behavior by creating a spatial boundary. The first example will show you how to use Dyson material to make a non-slip placemat. But what even is Dyson? Well, Dyson is a super handy sticky placemat-like material that keeps items such as drinks and plates more secure to the table. Now we will go into how exactly to make a Dyson placemat. You will first cut your Dyson into a vertical rectangle for the utensil. The shapes that you will be using are rectangle and circle. So you will first cut your Dyson into a vertical rectangle for utensil placement, a square or horizontal rectangle for your plate placement, and a circle for your cup placement. The idea is that instead of mealtime items ending up on the floor, as in picture 1, you would encourage your child to place their items back on their spot. When your child begins to throw, you would help redirect them to the sticky Dyson placemat with a point gesture and simple directions such as put spoon on red.
As many angels are motivated by food, let's also think about how we can expand just by requesting to eat. Supported and independent communicators can learn new words when we modify the activity just a little bit. So our supported communicators may do more eat, I eat, different phrases like that, or eat cookie, where our independent communicators will look at expanding much more words and trying to use new vocabulary. So let's take a video of how one family learned to use new words in a cooking activity by just modeling.
You make it go?
No.
Make it go. Yay! Good job, Philip. Do you know what we're going to make?
Make.
What are we going to make?
Make.
Do you know?
No.
You don't know?
No.
That's okay. I'll tell you. We're going to make cookies. Cookies.
Another option for helping to decrease throwing behavior at mealtime and beyond is by selecting a large bowl that can become an all done bucket.
There we go.
The idea of an all done bucket is that you're teaching your child to make another spatial boundary of where things can go when they are done. You'd, in theory, have it with you anytime that you think your child may be trying to tell you that they are finished by throwing. And just as they are about to throw, you help guide their arm to the bowl instead. And say something like, "Oh, you're all done, put in bowl." They put in, and then you quickly remove the bowl from out of reach. So the idea here is that you have your bowl on the table. Your child begins to throw their items in the ground. You help guide their hand to place the items they're all done with into the all done bowl instead.
So now let's talk about the activity of going for a walk. It's COVID approved, so definitely something that we should be able to have access to regardless of the pandemic. And hopefully you're getting a chance to get outdoors before it gets too cold. When going for a walk, teach your emerging communicator new words by pairing your point to things you see with the word look. And model with a gesture, picture, or the device. For a supported communicator, model and repeat a few times at the start of the walk. Try using 2 words, Mom, look. Then point to something. Lastly, let's see if we can have our independent communicators make longer phrases. Look, Mom, up, by pointing and waiting.
Many people with Angelman syndrome enjoy riding an adaptive bike, which is a great thing to incorporate into a walk. Let's go back and get out that tape that you used by trying to help your child with putting on their t-shirt, and let's try applying the actual wrapping concept to actual handlebars. You would take the tape and wrap it around both handlebars several times to create a visual guide for where your child's hands can be placed. You can also use this on scooters, wagons, or strollers, anything your child will grasp and pull or grasp and push.
Next, let's talk about the words go and stop. So for an emerging communicator, we can use going on a walk for something maybe a little bit more exciting or interesting. We can maybe have a race. And I don't mean a serious competition. Safety always does come first. However, in a playful way, we can introduce the race routine of counting 1, 2, 3, and then modeling go. I've included an activity board here to show what some of those options may look like. For a supported communicator, we want to try and model this across activities. So while we may first start this with a race, ready, set, go, or 1, 2, 3, go, we may see if we can expand this to pushing a stroller, directing a sibling, or running if it's safe enough, or pushing a wheelchair, right? There's lots of different options that we can try here. And as Lauren will talk about, a bike. And then for our independent communicators, we're going to wait for those longer phrases. I want go. That'd be a great way to start a race.
And we want to stick with the race theme here and go along with Caroline's go stop targets, which can be super fun if you're implementing and carrying out use of an adaptive bike to add in some practice of motor movements. On go, you would try to help your child grasp their handlebars, and then you would help them pedal and steer. And then on stop, you would try to teach them to move their eyes up to look around for safety. Go and stop. If your child doesn't have access to an adaptive bike yet, there is a resource guide in our handouts guiding you to a national organization that donates bikes to children with special needs. The next activity we will address is cleaning up, as it happens several times a day throughout different activities.
How many times does your child get up and leave an activity? If this is common for your angel, I really encourage you to pause and to think about it. Right now, leaving the activity is way easier. There's little incentive to have to say anything. However, I've had success with this, and it really helps when you can combine OT and speech targets. The reason many of our kids leave activities is because they are bored or they just don't like the activity. So I like to teach the phrase, something different, to give our kids a nice way of switching activities. To teach this, you have to model, model, model. You will first observe your child. And then when you start to see that look, you know the look, the one where they're really just starting to check out, may even just be a quick glance at something else. Model something different and immediately clean up the activity and offer new choices. For a supported communicator, your child says something different, and then you can immediately ask, what do you want? To encourage more communication. And for an independent communicator, we're gonna really try and keep them in the activity by waiting or pointing or providing some kind of sabotage, avoiding the next activity until they can say something different and clean up.
To pair along with in and something different, the all done bucket and bowl can come right back out to show us how to specifically teach your child how to clean up, how to put in, and how to signal the end of an activity. When your child is all done with a toy, something becomes boring, you can direct them to grasp the toy in their hand, help guide them to the bowl, and put in.
Bathing, another favorite of many kids in the Angelman syndrome population. As a quick disclaimer though, when it comes to technology, it doesn't fare well with water. So please use gestures or pictures in the bathroom. And if you do choose to bring technology into the bathroom, such as your child's speech generating device, consider putting it in a plastic baggie first. So this is one of my strategies that I just love. And I'm a huge proponent of core words. A core word is a verb, adjective, adverb, and it makes up like 80% of our communication and language or spoken language. So I'm going to challenge you here and encourage us to focus on the word get, which is a core word. We can certainly use words like bath and toilet. These are considered fringe words, as they are of course highly meaningful in a bath time routine. So I'd like to show you how we can combine both into one activity. For many angels, bath time is the highlight of their day. Did someone say bubbles and splash? So let's think of ways to motivate our kids to communicate what they want. For emerging communicators, the first step will be to keep the bathroom door closed. Then we will post a choice board. Oops. I'll go back to that other one. We'll post a choice board in order to teach our child to knock. And how appropriate is that? Of course, we want all of our kids to be knocking before they barge into the bathroom. We will build in our routine so that when your child takes a bath or uses the toilet, you will first knock or tap on the picture on the door before you go in. Model and repeat. So again, this is going to be a picture of get bath, and that's where you could tap get and work on that core word before you tap on bath.
To increase one small thing your child can do during bathing, we can start to teach them to get their own items in a caddy. A caddy can help decrease throwing individual items and will also teach your child to return their items to the same spot every time. The loofah is a nice addition for children with Angelman syndrome who may benefit from grasping something that is a bit larger and more stable than a washcloth and also provides the benefit of a crinkly sensation. Finding an item that is both easier to grasp and super motivating to touch are great starts to increasing bath time independence.
Continuing to build a bath time routine by using a visual schedule, we can also think about the language we can build around it. So for a supported communicator, we can model the word get as your child gets the items for the bathroom caddy. As the routine becomes familiar, expand the language and wait for your independent communicator tells you what items to gather. Get towel, get soap.
In this example, you can see the caddy with several different compartments, ideally at least two. The idea behind this is that we would teach the child to put the same items in the same compartment every time. So you could point to one compartment and say, get loofah, put in here, and then get soap, put in here, and point in each specific compartment that it is supposed to go in to make it consistent and predictable for a routine.
Now let's look at the words on and off for our bathing routines. For your emerging communicator, another idea is to model on off on your child's AAC system as you turn on the water and off. Or for your supported communicator, we can expand to other activities by using the same words. Maybe we can say, when it comes to Lauren's activity, she'll introduce the body paint that we can use in the bath. And we can talk about wiping the paint on and taking the paint off. We can also play music and teach music on and music off in the bathroom as well.
So as Caroline said, it's a great idea to whip out some bath paints to try and teach a little independence with washing. So how about trying to increase the independence of washing a specific body part by using fun bath paint? The idea is that you as a caregiver or parent would put paint on the body part you're trying to teach your child to wash. So in this example, you would put some bath paint on their arm.
For independent communicators who especially know the routine but maybe have a little difficulty with turning the water on and off, consider playing absent-minded and wait for your child to turn on the water. The idea being they'll know the bathroom routine, get Caddy, water on, and before they do their next step, they have to turn the water on. You can always point to the visual schedule to help remind them.
Now you can help teach your child to use the loofah to scrub the paint off of their arm. Once they grasp the loofah, you can point to the paint in their arm and say, "Get off."
Reading is such a crucial part of our kids' lives and teaching them not only how to use their devices and AAC systems, but then also to teach them literacy skills, which all children can learn how to read. We just have to meet them at their level to do so. So what can we do to start? The first thing we can do is model what whenever teaching a new vocabulary word in a book. So we open the book, we see a new animal or a new tree or something, we can always say what, and then ask the full question, what is that? For a supported communicator, before we turn the page, we may say, oh, what's next? And model what? And for an independent communicator, we'll see if, since we had modeled what is that or what is it as an emerging communicator, is your child now using that on their own?
So as we mentioned previously, with using vision to increase participation with using red wrap and tape, we're doing this because many people with Angelman syndrome have visual impairment called CVI or cortical visual impairment. And there's an entire website devoted to education and resources for CVI called the Little Bear Sees, which is included in our resource section. It discusses the importance of adapting visuals using a black background with rich contrasting colors, such as red, yellow, blue, or green. You could make a simple one-page book by using black construction paper for a background and then adding a simple 3D item, such as a textured ribbon or bumpy sticker, to make it more interactive for your child. The next activity that we're going to address is going to bed, which is often a challenge for our children and adults with Angelman syndrome.
So when going to bed, it may be helpful for your child to be able to say, help. And we can look at this when we start our bedtime routine by getting dressed for bedtime. So an emerging communicator, when your child is trying to get their pants on, we can be modeling the word help. And then likewise, if your child is more of a supported communicator, we could be modeling mom help or help off. And for an independent communicator, we're going to be looking for that longer utterance and waiting for it. So before your child tries to struggle too much, we can model or prompt with mom help me, but hopefully waiting for them to reach for their communication before that happens.
And once you hear your child ask for help in the way that works for them, you would start by placing the child's downward facing thumb inside the pants as shown by the red arrow, and placing their downward facing fingers on the outside as shown by the green arrow to create a hook or a handle. Once their hands are placed, you can encourage them to try pulling up by tapping on the wrist, the elbow by saying pull up.
So another, as we know, bedtime is hard and your child may need some additional supports to really feel safe and comfortable at bedtime. So one thing we can do for an emerging communicator is use a specific bedtime activity board and model need, and then hand them the item that they may need. So maybe they need blanket before they go to bed, and we can show them how to say that. For a supported communicator, we may know that blanket is their favorite. So instead we'll model need stuffed animal and hand them the stuffed animal so that then hopefully they will initiate need blanket. And for independent communicators, we're going to wait and see what they need by offering them, by holding back the choices and then kind of asking, what's wrong? What do you need?
Besides using a safe sleep bed, which is effective for many angels to help with both safety, calm, and healthy separation from caregivers and parents, another suggestion of how to help with sleep would be by using a compression bed sheet, which is shown here, which provides increased resistance and deep pressure, as angels often enjoy the compressed sensation of snuggling. This would help to create a resistive boundary that your child can help give themselves the pressure they need instead of always relying on parent or caregiver. We have now gone in depth with 7 activities that you can do at home. We hope that you will pick one activity that you can try for yourself in your home environment. We really appreciate you joining us on this journey for this presentation, and we encourage you to check out the free resources that we have included to both use for yourselves and share with your therapy and school teams. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or concerns, as we are happy to help guide you on how to have continued conversations with your care teams and how to apply these strategies to your individual